We got more iPhone leak dumps to sort through. There's a lot of garbage to get around, so stay tuned. But we're not just talking about this year's iPhones, we're actually talking about the next couple years of iPhones, mainly because this year's is so incredibly stale that I'm sorry, I can't make a whole video just about this year's anymore because it's too bad. But sounds like Apple's taking away the mini iPhone and replacing it with a second Max iPhone. Let's begin. So first of all, what the crap? Why? I mean, I totally get it, but the mini iPhone is probably disappointing in sales, and you're seeing tremendous demand for the Max iPhone, and that makes you want to diversify and have two separate Max iPhones, but at the same time, why? That's so annoying and frustrating. I mean, let's rewind a bit here. Okay, so iPhone 13 coming out later this year, rumored to have even larger camera bumps on the back, especially on the Pro models. You can thank sensor shift image stabilization for that one. The memes are true. The back of the camera looks insanely big, and then thankfully the iPhone 13 mini and iPhone 13 should still be happening. So if you're a big fan of the 5.4 inch size, you should get another upgrade this year. And this time, just because Apple knows that the iPhone 13 is going to look near identical to the 12, they're putting the cameras in a diagonal layout instead of, stoplight configuration. And that diagonal layout actually serves a very functional benefit. It allows you to flex on people to let them know that you have a newer iPhone, but Apple wasn't able to do anything differently to distinguish that one from last year. So switch around the cameras, boom, now everyone can instantly know, even if they're not even looking at the front of the device, because let's be honest, even if the notch is smaller, no one's really gonna pay attention to that type of crap. So I appreciate Apple focusing on these types of functional benefits by rearranging the cameras, and also on the Pro lineup this year, making sure the camera modules are larger. That way you have to buy all new smartphone cases. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to use last year's cases, partly because it's getting a little bit thicker, about 0.2 millimeters thicker than the iPhone 12 series, which should mean we might get some more smartphone components stuffed into this thing. And I know what you're all thinking. Oh, it's thicker. That means we can get better battery lives, right? No. I think they're actually going to shrink the batteries and just use thicker steel on the edges, just so it feels heavier. And Apple saw tremendous success with the iPhone 12 Pro, even selling better than the iPhone 12 and 12 mini. And because of the tremendous demand of the heavier iPhone, even though it functionally served no benefits, they're just going to be adding more weight to the device. No battery life, because how else would we get you to buy more chargers? If I'm coming across very salty today, it's mainly because I have fallen in love, alright? The 5.4 inch iPhone is amazing. It's very compact, it's very comfortable, the battery is good enough, and I'm glad to hear that there's another one coming out this year, but the report we're getting from Quo, who does tend to be somewhat accurate with different display sizes and lineups, not so much if you ask him about notches and when the notch is going away. Once again, he's saying 2023, there will be no notch. Sure, Quo, sure, okay. Well, I'll believe you this time, and I'm sure it'll be another 2 years away, 2 years from now. But basically, Quo came forward and said that in 2022, Apple's still gonna have 4 iPhones in the lineup, but now they're gonna have 2 6.1 inch models, which you guys know how I feel about. They already shared so many similarities, I couldn't really think of that many reasons for you to get the more expensive version. Y'all didn't listen to me, whatever, but now they also want to have 2 6.7 inch versions. Yeah, that's right. An iPhone 13 or 14 Max and an iPhone 14 Pro Max, which means a lower end iPhone with a larger display. Now, let me just go on the record with some of the benefits here. I'm sure the larger size iPhone that's more affordable would probably sell pretty well, because for the past few years, Apple has kind of been coupling the high quality camera features with the biggest display option, because typically when you have a bigger iPhone, you can fit better cameras and better battery lives in it, but it's very difficult to ship those premium camera features and that better battery life into the smaller model, which is typically the more affordable one. So if Apple was able to create a more affordable iPhone that still had the large size and the great battery life, it just didn't have quite as good a camera, I could easily see that becoming the best seller. The issue I take with this rumor, though, that makes me kind of doubt it in a certain way, is that the display is actually the most expensive part of these iPhones, especially because Apple does not manufacture their own displays. They're typically buying them from Samsung and occasionally LG, and they wanted to buy a few from BOE this year, but it didn't work out. They didn't have good enough yields, and the displays were, the technical term is complete garbage, so that's why they couldn't go with BOE this year. But hopefully, if they get their act together, Apple will be able to get OLED displays much cheaper than what they've been paying Samsung for them, and that would ideally allow them to make a cheaper iPhone that was still a 6.7-inch display. In this case, I'm hoping it would be at least a couple $100 less than the Pro Max, which currently starts at $1,100. Factor in some inflation we might get over the next couple months. Who knows? Maybe the Pro Max version will be $1,200. But if Apple can't get BOE or LG making displays cheap enough for them, I have a hard time understanding why Apple would be able to make a significantly cheaper iPhone that's just, made of aluminum and not steel. It's lacking probably a telephoto lens, and other than that, it's pretty much the same one as the Pro Max. Like, how much cheaper can they get when the most expensive component of the phone is still probably going to be shared? I don't know what the specs are for the iPhone 14 or whatever, but if they plan on the Pro Max being 120 hertz and then the regular Max being 60 hertz, that might help them lower the cost overall and realize that, hey, average consumers might not care about 120 hertz, so we're still going to leave that as a pro feature, but we still want to have a big iPhone for people to choose that's just 60 hertz but still more affordable. And in that sense, I think it would be a bestseller if it was anywhere under $1,000. Just thinking about that now, if people could get the 6.7-inch Max iPhone for around $900 and it just had a standard camera and it was made of aluminum, that thing would probably sell like hotcakes, because the markets have kind of spoken, and Apple tried to revive the smaller smartphone market with the 12 mini, and it clearly is not very big. It was still in the top 10 best-selling phones of January, though, so I feel like people are harping on it probably a tad too much. Like every flagship Android phone you guys have watched reviews for across all the different YouTubers out there, none of those were selling better than the 12 mini, okay? So I still feel like it's selling pretty great, and maybe if more of us buy the mini this year, Apple will consider keeping it around, because I would much rather have options and range in the lineup of, if you want a smaller iPhone, have this one. If you want a regular iPhone, have this one. If you want a giant iPhone, have this one. Instead of just going, you know what, we don't need small phones anymore. Let's just have medium and large, and there's just going to be two mediums and two larges, and the difference between the two is probably going to be, telephoto lens and stainless steel, which, while we're on that subject, I'm okay if even on the Pro iPhones they want to ditch stainless steel, because that glossy finish collects fingerprints like no tomorrow, and I would love a titanium chassis on an iPhone. It would be lighter, it would look cooler, the matte finish is everything. I love that. So as long as Apple's taking orders from my videos, let's try to ditch steel, especially on big phones. That makes them really, really heavy. Lighter materials would be great, and honestly, that would make me even tempted to go with a 6.7-inch Max iPhone that was still made of aluminum. It didn't have the best camera in the world, but it still had a nice display. I could almost see myself getting that, but knowing Apple, it would probably not have 120 hertz. I don't know if they want to make that a standard option across the lineup. With the iPad Pro, at least, they definitely didn't want to. They introduced it on the Pro iPads and then never brought it to any other iPads, and they still haven't, like 3 years later. So my guess is 120 hertz is still going to be a Pro feature even next year, but I mainly am upset that they are probably going to take the mini iPhone away due to lack of demand. I just wish that they could at least keep it in the lineup, even if it's not a flagship option, even if it doesn't have the latest CPU and it doesn't have the best camera. In fact, why can't the iPhone 12 mini design basically just become the third generation SE? Doesn't have to have the highest resolution, doesn't have to have 120 hertz or anything. You can even keep the old notch on it, just make it the more affordable option in the lineup that is also smaller, because there's a demographic of people out there that appreciate the smaller iPhones. I feel like the Jake Sully and the Avatar situation, and everybody's just like, Max iPhones are for the win, and I'm like, this is our land, we want small phones now. So please help Apple change their mind on this. Buy up a bunch of mini iPhones, store them in your basement. You don't even have to use them, okay? This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.